as merchants of history, we need to correct something that the Venerable Alhaji Sadick said. What did he say that was so blatantly wrong? This is what he said.
Every political party in this country will trace its roots to the Aborigines' rights protection movement. Through to where? UGCC. UGCC gave birth to CPP. UP, which are becoming on, was produced and given birth singularly by Santehene and Bafour, Ochiame Bafour Akoto. Bafour Akoto was CPP, but today we are priding of being UP, and I'll give you the details. Every political party in this country will trace its roots to the Aborigines' rights protection movement. Through to where? UGCC. UGCC gave birth to CPP. UP, which are becoming on, was produced and given birth singularly by Santehene and Bafour, Ochiame Bafour Akoto. Bafour Akoto was CPP, but today we are priding of being UP, and I'll give you the details.
Blatantly wrong, manifestly wrong, contrary to history. It is not true. It cannot be. UP was not produced by Asantehene. There was a party that was produced by the Asantehene. It is called the National Liberation Movement, the NLM. Another thing that he said, which is not just wrong, but it's an anathema, is that Bafour Akoto was CPP. That's an anathema. Ochiame Akoto is an opponent of the CPP. If you're looking for an opponent of the CPP in global political history, it will be Ochiame Akoto. Ochiame Akoto will turn in his grave if he hears Sadick said that he, Ochiame, was CPP. How? It's like saying that Jerry Rawlings was NPP. It's like saying that Tony Edu was NPP. So it's like 40 years from now, somebody comes to launch a party and says, Dr. Tony Edu was NPP. My goodness. Ochiame will turn in his grave that he, Ochiame, was CPP. But how can he say that? But Alan Kyremateng was there. Alan Kyremateng knows that Ochiame can never be CPP. Alan Kyremateng should have said so to him. Anyway, let's check a bit of history of the UP tradition. The United Party of Ghana was formed in 1957 as a coalition of several opposition parties following the passage of the Avoidance of Discrimination Act, which banned parties based on ethnic, religion, or religious lines. The parties that came together to form the United Party included the National Liberation Movement, the NLM, the Northern People's Party, Anglo Youth Organization, Muslim Association Party, Togoland Congress, and Gashifi Mokpe. Now let me explain a little bit of that and show you why he's blatantly and manifestly wrong. The National Liberation Movement was truly formed by the Asantehene through his Ochiame, Bafour Akoto. Bafour Akoto formed the National Liberation Movement. Now, the National Liberation Movement caught a lot of steam and got a lot of momentum because after losing the 1951 elections, they unite the Congress Party. There's a party called the Congress Party, which was formed by Kofi Abrefa-Buzia. The Congress Party contested elections and lost woefully to the CPP. So it was decided that because Kwame Nkrumah's politics of cocoa was unfavorable to the cocoa farmers in Ashanti, that Ashanti had to form a party to look after the interest of cocoa farmers. Now, the Asantehene, in those days, cocoa was farmed mainly in Ashanti. Today, cocoa is farmed mainly in Western region, I have to say. But in those days, cocoa was farmed mainly in Ashanti. So it was important for the Asantehene because most of the Ashanti chiefs in the Federation of Ashanti were cocoa farmers. And so Kwame Nkrumah, as Prime Minister and leader of government business, determined cocoa prices and how cocoa will work, etc., etc. They were grossly unhappy with that. So they decided to form the National Liberation Movement, formed by the Asantehene. But Asantehene did not act himself. The implementation of the process was done by Bafour Akoto. Bafour Akoto, who is the father of the former Agric Minister, Usu-Efri Akoto. Bafour formed the National Liberation Movement. Now, the National Liberation Movement had a certain list of ethos. They wanted to achieve federation for Ghana so that cocoa control will be within Ashanti and the Asantehene. That's what they were looking for. So the National Liberation Movement was formed. Then in 1954, a by-election occurred. I'd like to show you something about the by-election. And it was a very important part of the history of this process. Let's watch the video. Now, in this video, I am launching, I'm supporting the launch of a book by Adom-Otchere. Seated in the audience is Alan Kyremateng. Also, John Agyekuma, former president of Ghana. I don't remember whether Nana Akufo-Addo was there. I think he wasn't there. And a lot of important people from Ashanti region were in this audience. The event was at the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences. And also, Adom-Otchere graciously asked me to MC the event because we were talking about political history. Now, I captured the NLM's first political victory in that situation, and I'd like you to see it. Alan Kyremateng was in the audience. You see him. John Agyekuma was in the audience. Here's the video.
So in 1955, the National Liberation Movement had just been formed. And the first person out of whom I heard this name, B.F. Kusi, was actually President Kufuor. And President Kufuor was telling me the story that he's quite sad that our young generation, they don't meet politicians like B.F. Kusi. I don't know him. I never saw him. But President Kufuor seemed to be very enamored about this B.F. Kusi guy. He's talked about him quite a bit. So when I read Dennis Austin's book, where he had detailed the by-election in 1955, now this was very dramatic. The CPP was in control, and the chairman talked about how CPP got some support in Ashanti with key people like Victor Uzu and others. And again, it was Bafour that brought them back out of that. But a by-election had occurred in Adom-Otchere, the same constituency that President Kufuor later represented, because Mr. Grant, the CPP candidate, had died, unfortunately, in a plane crash. NLM has just been formed. Bafour had a challenge. He needed to demonstrate that LLM was a formidable force in Ashanti. If you read the account of Austin, there was a lot of communication between Kojobo, Tio, Krobeduse, and Nkrumah in terms of how that by-election should be managed. President Nkrumah recognized the election as an important watershed in terms of valuing the new National Liberation Movement. Bafour marshaled forces there. In fact, at some point, Krobeduse wrote to Nkrumah that he shouldn't come because it was not safe for him to be there. That the people of Adom-Otchere were opening up vehicles that arrived in the town, ostensibly for the campaign, and asking where is Nkrumah to harm him, so that Nkrumah should not attend, but they were going to manage and win. In the end, Bafour won. B.F. Kusi was elected as in the by-election. And so, a round of applause for him. So when you think of this story, and you know that Ochiame is a warrior.
Okay, I was hoping they'll show you the part of the video where Alan Kyremateng was in the audience. So this is really the story. Can you get me back the NLM, the list again? I'll come to this one. Can you get me back the list again? So this is the NLM. The NLM, which was founded by Bafour, fought its first elections against the CPP in Adom-Otchere in a by-election where Mr. Grant had unfortunately died in a car crash. I said plane crash. In a car crash. And B.F. Kusi, who later became mentor for John Agyekuma, was the candidate for the National Liberation Movement, and they won the by-election at Adom-Otchere. This was the single most important successful story of Bafour. And Bafour wrote a letter to Nkrumah telling him that now that I've defeated you in this by-election, get ready for the next election, I'll defeat the CPP. How can you, forming a new united party, Sadick, chairman of the party, 50 years later, come and tell us that Bafour was a CPP member? Oh, this is not good at all. He got it very, very wrong. And I hope that the media can pick it up. He got it manifestly wrong, absolutely wrong, embarrassingly very wrong, too wrong. You can never talk about Bafour like that. It's like, as I'm saying that Tony Edu is MPP. No way. Or Dana Bodakpi is MPP. No. Or Rawlings is MPP. How? Bafour Akoto is the lifeblood of the anti-CPP movement in Ashanti. He's the lifeblood of the anti-CPP movement in Menchia Palace. And then Sadick, the chairman of the UP, in his first speech about the United Party, is trying to steal Bafour and says that he was a CPP. Oh, no. So that was the National Liberation Movement. The Northern People's Party, formed by Tolonai and others, were forming it so that they wanted Northern people's interest to be considered. In those days, the British were colonizing Ghana according to the Gold Coast. So they called it, the Gold Coast did not include Ashanti and Northern. The Gold Coast was the coast. So they had Gold Coast, the Ashanti territories, and the Northern territories. That was how they governed it. And so it was very easy for Ashanti to become a different country. And it was, of course, we don't want to go there, but it was J.B. Dankwa's ingenuity that brought Ashanti together with the Gold Coast in what they call the Ashanti Advisory Council. That's a different matter. When we do more history, I'll tell you about that. It will be in the podcast. But the Ashanti Advisory Council, which was set up by Dankwa, was the reason why the Ashanti territories joined the South to become Ghana, to make Gold Coast the whole country. So the Northern People's Party formed there, including Mumuni Bawumia, I have to say. Mumuni Bawumia was a member of the Northern People's Party. And so they formed Northern People's Party for their agitation of Northern stuff. Okay. And then there was the Anglo Youth Association. I believe it has something to do with Apalu, Modesto Apalu. He and his friends formed the Anglo Youth Organization. They also formed it because there's this Togoland issue that was burning, and they wanted their interest to be looked after in a more direct way. And then there was the Muslim Youth Association, who were thinking that Islam had started in the Gold Coast not very long before these 1950s. Islam was not as big as today. It was much smaller. So they thought that being a small religious group, they also needed representation, and so they formed the Muslim Youth Association. And then there was a Togoland Congress. There was a Gashimokwe, who were those who thought that if the Northern People's Party had formed for the Northerners and the NLM had formed for Ashanti, it was important that they also formed theirs. Nkrumah was concerned as Prime Minister because these agitations were leading Ghana to what Nkrumah didn't want, which was the federalist state, the federalist arrangement, what Nigeria have, what the United States of America have, that federalist arrangement. Every region is autonomous and we come together, that kind of thing. Like the Ashanti Federation, what Asante Hene has, it's a federation of people. Everyone is autonomous, but we come together to set up military and a few things. But on other important things like taxation and other things, everyone is autonomous. Nkrumah was concerned that these agitations from these political parties was leading Ghana into a federation. So he passed a law. It was called the Avoidance of Discrimination Act. Now, the Avoidance of Discrimination Act was passed by Parliament to say that if your party is formed with an objective to promote a sectional interest within the Gold Coast, you are outlawed by December 31st, 1957. That's the law that Parliament passed. The CPP had majority in Parliament, so they passed that law. And so with that, all of these parties were outlawed. Again, it was Bafour who then marshaled these parties together and said, okay, Nkrumah doesn't want us to be separate, so we are going to teach him a lesson. Let's form the United Party. We'll go to the election and we'll win it. It was the emergence of the United Party that made the 1956 election very crucial.